What is your it will be fine? Narrator. It was not fine. Moment. Went to drop in on a 14-foot half pipe. First time on anything larger than 6 feet. Stood there for a while, then just said frick it and started leaning forward. Next thing I remember is waking up in a puddle of blood while people yelled at me to stop bleeding on the ramp. Apparently I basically just fell 14 feet straight onto my face. Hardly even touched the ramp. This guy stubbed his toe at my gym. It was kinda funny. I'm showering and all I hear is, oh frick. Frick 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 super loud. I come out of my stall and walk over to the change area and there is this guy I used to talk to occasionally, and he's sitting there and his toe is bleeding like crazy. I asked him what happened and if that was him who yelled, and he says yeah, he just stubbed his toe on the way out of the shower. They had these little lips at the bottom. Like you had to step up about 3 or 4 inches when you opened the door and got out. And, I'll be fine. It did look kinda bad but whatever. Dude said he was fine. I don't see him for like a few months, maybe even half a year. Then finally he's back at the gym. I ask how he was doing, and he tells me the stubbed toe got some crazy infection, and they almost had to amputate this foot. It was not fine. Shared showers are no joke. Source: dorm life. You wear flip-flops or pee on your feet, or so they said. I'm a forklift driver. Last Friday, I tapped a pole on the dock of the warehouse. I was previously parked next to it and turned into it. There was no damage on either the truck or the pole, so I continued working. Apparently, my job has tons of cameras and caught the whole thing on tape. HR called me on Monday to tell me I was fired for having an accident and not reporting it. So for all forklift drivers, it's super common now for them to have a shock detectors. There are ones on the market that will email managers as soon as an impact occurs with the time and the level of impact. Pretty much, if you have even a very small incident, it's your best bet to report. Source: engineer in a factory. Cut my finger when I was opening a Chinese package of star anise with a serrated knife. Yes, I am a stupid person. Anyway, it was shooting blood everywhere, so I wrapped in a towel and went to the hospital cause it looked pretty deep. I'm laughing with the nurses as they stitch it up about how terrible of a cook I must be and all is good. No big. Anyway, I cleaned the wound daily and never neglected it. A week later I'm watching a movie with my GF and I keep smelling something awful, like death. Turns out the wound got infected. The next day I went to my general practitioner and showed her my finger. Her eyes went wide and she said very gravely, you need to go to the hospital right now. Of course my car battery died, so I had to wait in a panic for my bro to pick me up. We get to the hospital again and a doctor comes to check it out. He proceeds to use a metal tool on my finger's wound like he was excavating a freaking dinosaur. No anesthetic or painkillers at all. Guys, I've been hit by a car before. I have stitches all over my body because I was a rather rambunctious boy, but this was a pain I never experienced. It was like someone was playing with my bones. I guess in a way the doctor was. The thing that really freaked me out is the doc kept whispering to herself, what on earth isn't there? They admitted me and had a disease specialist come to run tests. I'm a professional musician, so I cried and begged my girlfriend to make sure the doctors know that I am not going through surgery unless absolutely needed. They pumped me full of antibiotics and that liquid drip thing. The first night my head was so itchy, like a bunch of fire ants were crawling on it. Turns out I'm allergic to that specific antibiotic and the reaction is called red man syndrome, but they couldn't tell because I have dark skin. Monday comes and the doctor says the cut looks good and I don't need surgery. All this because I didn't take the time to open a package like a person. TLDR. Small cut turned into a terrifying infection. I dated a girl for 6 months. She didn't have any kind of social media, but I figured it's fine. Social media isn't for everyone. She only wanted to come to my place because she said hers was a mess, but I figured it was fine. I didn't even have to drive anywhere. She always wanted to meet at specific times, usually on weekdays, and always needed to go home afterwards, but I figured it's not a big deal. She has a busy work schedule. If you haven't figured out that she was married already, then you're as gullible as I was. If you haven't figured out that she was married already, then you're as gullible as I was. From your description I figured she had mental health issues including hoarding and a court-ordered curfew. Jury duty. This case involves children, so feel free to step out now if you can't handle it. How bad can it be? Pedophilia trial involving little girls, 30 plus charges. There's like 30 people here. Chances are pretty slim. First person called to the jury. Doe. I'm not crazy. I should stop taking my medication. After a year sober, I ended up relapsing. Breaking up with girlfriend of 8 years who loved me, on a hunch that it was destiny. Moved to the middle of nowhere, and I DK the rest. In a hoe, back on meds. 7 months sober, and picking up the pieces. One day at a time. Hope things keep an upward swing for you. Getting a tattoo on my ribs sternum. I had a bunch of big tattoos already, but people were telling me how bad it was going to hurt. I was like, nah, I'm used to it. It'll be fine. It was not fine. It was, in fact, excruciating. Between that and the top of the foot, it was not fine. Every single time I don't study. That's a lot of narration. Boss gave me an impossible task. I didn't do it. I got called to their office. Brain. Well, I guess they must have realized it was impossible and want to apologize for putting me under all that stress. Narrator. No, he is getting fired. Sometimes bosses knowingly give out impossible tasks so they have a reason to fire you. Letting procrastination become a habit and trying to coast on being the smart kid. It was fine in high school and college, but grad school kicked my butt. Coasting meant I never had to learn how to study, and therefore didn't have to apply discipline to do well. I was certainly smart enough to do advanced classes, but never did because I lacked the drive. Now, at age 27, having to teach myself how to persist when things get difficult when studying is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. He is jealous and manipulative, but the sex is great. When the heat cools down I will just break up with him and leave. It will be fine. When I was 8 years, I fell off my bike going as fast as I could. I landed chin first, breaking my jaw and scraping my face up pretty bad. Later, while my chin was getting stitches, the doctor asked how I was doing. I said, fine. Everyone in the room started laughing. Mayo, you were a crazy kid. How do you even break your jaw on that? Seems horrible. Winter holidays, the 17th of January. I had a ski pass valid until the end of the day, but I was tired and there was smog everywhere. I told myself it would be fine. I'll rest tomorrow. Don't waste a ski day. I dislocated both shoulders. It took me 2 months to have them patched up. French healthcare is great. BTW. Went on a hike with my now ex-boyfriend and my best friend when I was about 19. I was by far the most experienced outdoorsy person with a background in hiking, rock climbing, self-rescue, and professional CPR first aid. My friend had a little knowledge but very little, and my boyfriend, who we'll call Trent, had zero, as in he'd only slept outside to camp in his backyard. The trail we picked was easy, highly popular, and I'd done it once before. That said, I'd hiked it in September. Our trip happened on a sunny day in May, and while the trail report said some snow on trail due to elevation, they did not detail the multiple feet of snow on the ground. We lost the trail almost immediately, but I knew landmarks such as a spot where it crossed under the freeway several hundred feet above, bridges, etc. I knew I could find our way back, so we played in the snow for a while. On our way back it became clear that we'd misjudged the distance to the bridge and actually passed it. We needed to turn back for my landmark on the freeway, but this is when Trent began arguing that we'd already walked this far and surely there would be another bridge. He wanted to forge on. I stood there arguing with him and trying to get him to see reason. He went macho and asserted he knew what he was doing. I caved and followed him into the wilderness because I couldn't bring myself to leave him to freeze to death, nor explain to his parents that I'd done so. I checked my phone in the sun and saw we had great reception and several hours of daylight left. It'll be fine, I thought. Cut us wandering miles in the snowy woods, climbing a scree slope, my friend dropping into a small ice hollow and slicing her hand open, us all crossing 2 frozen waterfalls which were in the melt process, several tumbles down slopes that could have wrecked us, and hitchhiking with a very religious Russian woman. We made it back okay, no permanent damage, but I look back on that as some of the worst decision making of my whole life. It was not fine. I just about let Trent get us all killed, and he was a prick and not at all worth it. I learned a lot from that day in the woods. The most important life lesson being to not let the newbie drive, and the second to never assume there is another bridge. I dumped Trent approximately 3 weeks later. I got a message from the sister of my best friend. It wasn't unusual, but she was texting stuff like she was crying. Constant misspellings. I'm like, you'll worry later. I have theater class. I check my phone, and it's blown up with messages from her stating that my best friend is in the hospital and isn't going to make it. I'm like, what the heck? He seemed fine the last time I saw him. So naturally, me being 13 and her being 11 or 12, I presumed she was trying to pull a fat one. Boy, was I wrong. I get a call from my mom and dad. They are coming to pick me up from school to take me to see my friend. He passed away later that evening, and I spent the next year and a half in agony over it. Texting stuff like she was crying. Constant misspellings. Sudden sloppy texting from people who are usually on point with spelling and grammar is the biggest alarm bell for me. I've had so many situations I can remember where I just know something really terrible has happened just from the way people are texting. After she'd been gaslighting me for weeks, I found out my ex of 3 years, who I was living with for 2, was cheating on me. She'd used my laptop to check her Facebook and left it logged in, and when I went to use it I saw a message from the guy that confirmed everything. I was in the middle of finals at college, so I packed my bag to go to the library and study, thinking I'd approach it later. I made it one subway stop away before it became very clear that I couldn't. What's weird is that after I got out of the subway and had finally picked up her calls, I'd sent her a photo of the message, which I took in case she tried to gaslight me again. She was in the midst of finally admitting she was cheating when I saw a group of people walking by with t-shirts that said Team Fidelity and Eiley and Eiley and Eiley and Eiley and Eiley and Eiley. That crap wrecked me. I've never loved anybody the way I once loved her. I pushed running too hard. I thought I can hit 70 miles this week. I'm still recovering and am only now starting to jog again. I hurt myself in early February and probably won't be 100% until May. Dated a person that straight up had mental issues. 23 but can't take responsibilities and just wants to cuddle play the whole day and would get angry if I told them they needed to either finish their degree or try to find a job. But would also get angry because their parents weren't letting them do whatever they wanted at their home because they were bringing no money and their parents were struggling with the bills. Tried to control me 24/7. Been typing me. My best friend warned me about that. I told her it would be fine. Yeah, it was not. That person dragged me into absolute heck. My best friend grabbed me one day and made me listen to an audio I sent her crying to make me realize how hard was that person fricking me up. We broke up that day. Legit, owe your friend your life TBQH. When I was 11, me and my friends built a fort on the other side of a small river, 3 ft across, and we built a bridge out of a bunch of sticks. My friend dared me to drive my bike across, so I did. Got a head start. Wheel got stuck in one of the branches. I got flung off into the fort. It was not fine. One time when I was a little girl, my best friend and I also built a bridge over a stream with sticks. Except it was not over a stream. It was in a stream. Long story short, the stream got all backed up because we essentially just built a dam. Good times. 2 aircraft reported overdue. Horrible sinking feeling in my stomach, but told the younger guys it was probably just a comms problem and not to get too stressed. The next call came in about 5 minutes later. The rescue operation lasted 3 days and was only partly successful. I never really got over what happened on that one. I'm curious as to which tragedy you are referring to. This is almost play-by-play of what happened to my cousin, but he was on board. 25 is too young to die. When my prom date, who I was dating at the time, said she didn't want any form of flowers from prom. No carry flowers, no boutonniere. Well, it tripped a red flag, but I said it'd be fine. It was not fine. We had a terrible night. She was over an hour late. We barely talked, and we broke up 3 days later. Didn't drink water for days. Only Coca-Cola. Had rough sex. Wanted to pee. Didn't want to get up. It will be fine. I can hold it. Held it, woke up, it was not fine. I got a UT and was peeing blood for days. The worst thing? Peeing the clots. They hurt like a mother. I thought you were going to say you got gastritis. That was definitely worse. Last Tuesday, going back to work after taking a week off cause my dad died. I kept telling myself I'd be fine. I walk in through the door, see my boss, and before she even looked up to say anything, I busted out into a blubbering mess and cried hard, wailing like an idiot. Cue all my co-workers hugging me, giving me condolences. I know they mean well, but I guess I really wasn't emotionally ready as I thought I was. Anybody else ever really wish their narrator was Morgan Freeman or Ron Howard, but know that deep down it's Gilbert Gottfried? I've listened to Gilbert read 59 Shades of Grey. I'd be okay if he was my narrator. I bought a bottle of Everclear saying it will be fine and proceeded to drink the whole thing in about an hour and 45 minutes. It was not fine. I avoided alcohol poisoning, but I did wake up in a friend's hammock that I was across town from when I blacked out. I have never been that hungover in my life. Spiked a watermelon once. For 1.75s of booze. Cut it up and really couldn't taste the alcohol. Made it into jungle juice and ate a bunch of it. Worst hangover ever. Nobody could get me out of bed. Missed work. Went in the next day and apologized to my boss and swore it would never happen again. They were impressed with my honesty and just laughed and sent me out to work. In middle school at a church camp, I was obsessed with a girl who didn't notice me, and to get her attention, I accepted the dare of one of my friends, jumping off of a second-story balcony onto the concrete below. I did, and landed on my heels, whereby I ended up tearing some tendon in both of my legs. It definitely was not fine at high school soccer conditioning the rest of the summer, to say the least. Haha. When I started losing my hair in my 20s, I figured, no big deal. I have a fiance already and I can just start shaving it. Soon after I shaved it, my GF at the time couldn't handle it. She felt like I was a different person and that she no longer found me attractive. It was a little deeper than just that, but that's basically the gist. I've told the story on Reddit before. It's actually my highest rated comment, sadly, but most people don't believe me. But it's true. She just didn't see me the same way, and apparently my hair was part of what she had fallen in love with. Fast forward a few years and I have had no real relationships. I'm just freaking ugly without hair. I never would have thought going bald could be so detrimental. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done everything in my power to retain that hair. It's a goddamn curse. What's fricked up is that when I wear a hat, I'll actually have interest from women on occasion. But once the hat comes off, all bets are off. One time I was talking to these two girls at a bar, and one of them pulls off my hat. All I can remember hearing is her friend just going EWW before they both crept away and disappeared. Man, that killed me. Let this be a lesson to you young men. If you are starting to lose your hair, and you don't have the face or head to pull off bald, do something about it. Immediately. It may not seem like a big deal, but it has been one of my biggest regrets in life, thinking it wasn't gonna matter much. I look awful, and I have an almost impossible time trying to get dates and even jobs sometimes, although I've given up on relationships by this point. Building a fixture, and did not verify the most up-to-date prints. Changes that had been made were taken back out. 30 hours of labor, and it all had to be scrapped. Ran out of antidepressants, and thought maybe I'll see how I do without them. Should be fine. A week of severe exhaustion, dizziness, and a kneecapped work schedule later, it was not fine. I suffer from severe depression, but I have to hide from my kids and my job. I have to make them think I'm fine all the time. I am not fine, but I am still trying. Hang in there, there are lots of us. When I admitted the abuse a cousin did to me, I had no idea what he did was wrong at that point. I said, "It's fine." My friend said it wasn't. When I was about 1 year old or so, my mom was told this by a pediatrician when she called late at night to ask what to do. I was crying and had a fever, and wouldn't sleep. Lady said to give me aspirin. After 2 or 3 rounds of this, They finally took me to the hospital. I ended up in the ICU and somehow managed to get a staph infection from a nurse, so I ended up staying even longer. Mom had the choice of coming during visiting hours or sitting in a chair. She sat and slept in that chair, and the nurses snuck her food. I survived, but it was the last time my mom ever trusted a doctor at their word. Every early morning when I say I'll just turn my alarm off, I won't fall back asleep. Just resting my eyes. It will be fine. It is never fine. How haven't I learned this? Oh, I forgot to refill my depression meds, and my doctor's office is closed for the long weekend. I'll call on Tuesday. It'll be fine. It was fine. So fine in fact that I decided I didn't need them after all. And that was fine too. I was fine. Until months later when I was so mentally unwell that my apartment resembled a landfill and it didn't even register as a problem to me. If you're doing well enough to think you don't need your meds anymore, that's probably because your meds are working. Back when I was working at BK, I had fallen on some spilled oil someone had forgotten to clean up. My manager led to the break room, where I sat for a few minutes and informed my BF. I thought I was fine and went back to work. By the end of my shift, I was not fine. My uniform hadn't shown it because it was a size too big, but my shoulder had actually dislocated. I went to the hospital. They put back in, but wrong. They simply flung my arm over my head. I have nerve damage in my shoulder now. The pain is usually unnoticeable, but when it flares up I am in pain for days. BK has paid its dues to me, but because I can't remember who treated, I can't take legal action against the only hospital our town has right now. Your medical file with that hospital will have records of who treated you. If they don't, that's a huge no-no. You aren't expected to remember the names of emergency carers when you're in pain, sick, unconscious. That's their job. Walking into work after shooting H. I think I had just made it to the back door before it actually hit me because I was rushing. Still on the clock. Long story short, I dead, fell over in the kitchen, smashed my head in, had to get taken out in an ambulance, had a panic attack as I struggled to breathe, stuck in the hospital for over a day, and stuck lying to the doctors who knew I was lying and knew they knew I was lying. My stupid junkie BF came and visited me at some point before nighttime, but when I was actually released I ended up having to walk to the bus stop, alone. And taken 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 and take. Then I had to go back to work the next day. LOL awkward. My entire H addiction period could be its own answer. I've had neck pain my entire life, but figured everyone has tense neck muscles. Chiropractor here and massage there kept the pain manageable. All is well. I had an accident a year ago and got x-rays, MRIs to ensure I was healing alright. Surprise, I'm missing. Straight up missing. My dude, the C1 vertebra. All is not well. Ridiculously rare. I'm being monitored by specialists now. Step 1 is a spinal fusion. Then, we're not really sure, but we're gonna start somewhere. I'm excited for progress. All is well. During one of my pre-op checkups today, they noticed an odd MRI shot on one of the arteries in my neck. It's dissected. Immediate panic and major surgery delay. MRA and angiogram must ensue. However, I'm majorly allergic to contrast and diphenhydramine, so we're weighing risk-benefit. All is not well. Stay tuned on this exciting adventure of falling apart, but hopeful. Got a call that my mom, 41, had been in an accident. I was worried, but the man I was employed by drove me the 1.5 hours to the hospital. He was a nurse and we weren't worried about it very much. I got there and she had been dead for half hour. I went up to the room I was told she would be in, expecting tubes and broken bones, and they took me into the room they brought her into off the ambulance. It was not fine. It'll never be fully fine again. I was 20. When I broke my foot, For some reason my parents convinced me that it was probably just a stress fracture and sprained ankle. A few weeks in a cast and I'd recover flawlessly and it would be as if the whole thing never happened. Turns out it was a compound break that required surgery to screw the bone back together. Years later I've developed moderate arthritis and a small bone spur. I'm not even 30 and I have an arthritic foot and can't wear non-supportive shoes. My foot was not fine, and it never will be again. Mine is extremely recent, like today, recent. So I had a tonsillectomy about a week ago. I'm 13 BTW, and when they finished I said, I can feel my scab. A week later, I'm still really hurting, which isn't normal. I can barely swallow, so I'm spitting into the sink and suddenly, blood comes out. I tell myself I'm alright. Once it stops, I get in bed and go to sleep. The next day, I'm super drowsy and I'm just not feeling like myself. So I'm spitting in the sink again and I realize it's all red, like blood red. Then, it just started pouring out. I call my mom and we rush to the hospital. Turns out there was a blood clot and I had to do an emergency surgery. I'm feeling much better now and the surgery went well. There was almost a school shooting at my university. In reality it turned out to be just threats and the person who had threatened online to come shoot up our university never actually showed. But in the Netherlands guns are so rare all the cops of the country seemed to converge on my city. With all the cops present I felt pretty safe and I was thinking okay, bit scary but this will be fine. Right? Then we all went in for our first lecture of the day. All of us had to be patted down before entering and have our bags searched. Then an officer from a super special squad or something came to talk ahead of our lecturer to tell us how and when to begin emergency evacuation and what the school lockdown systems entailed. He started saying stuff like when you hear a gun or alarm go off, running is only worth the effort if you have a space in mind to run to where you can certainly be safe. Don't just run for the sake of running. Moving targets are like open targets and in these narrow university buildings zigzagging is not an option and you would have no cover. Once he started giving advice like that the narrator in my brain just went frick, this is not fine. We knew jack crap about guns. There are hardly any guns in the Netherlands and actual school shootings are super rare, like 1 in 25 years rare maybe. So we were terrified. Needless to say none of us actually learned anything study related that day, but now we know how school shootings work. The dude who posted the threat online never came with his guns and was later arrested for making the threat and owning illegal weapons. But it was definitely a crap's about to hit the fan moment. I'm from Texas and we had bomb threats at our school. I wish being more familiar with weaponry made it easier. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.